I know.
Dude,
Okay.
Harvard Business School.
Only 1 year, honestly. And as people say, when I told people that I was going to Harvard Business School, people were like, "Oh, it's BS without the H, right?"
What does that mean?
Like business school in general is
Mhm.
BS. It's like you worthless unless you got the Harvard name in front of it. It's kind of they're like you're paying 250K for the Harvard name, and I was like, okay,
Yeah.
that's fair.
But do you think that's the case though? Like with business schools in general, you think it's all the same? It's just that Harvard has the name Harvard in front of it, or?
I mean, I think when it comes to business school, I think in some sense I went to business school thinking
Mhm.
that like, I think the name kind of mattered, and I think even when you ask a lot of business school students, like, and a lot of students have reached out to talk about like applying to business school even in the past year.
Mhm.
And given how expensive it is, most people everyone's mindset is like either go to the top 5 or don't go at all because it's not valued, like it's not that valuable, right? But I think after having gone to business school for a year, maybe I drank the Kool-Aid already.
Yeah.
But I think it's actually pretty useful. Like, and especially for someone who didn't come from a business background, who was a former engineer. Like, I always
You were a former engineer.
yeah,
Software engineer?
software engineer.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
Continue.
Yeah. So like, I think there's a certain way that I thought, and I didn't really like all these like softer stuff, marketing, kind of like supply chain, even just like operations. They all seem super easy. Anyone can learn it. It's not that valuable. But I think I've learned that it's a very different way of thinking, and it's just kind of like swimming or training for anything else. You just kind of need to get your mind like solving these kind of questions or like seeing enough situations where you kind of can start pattern matching and seeing
Kind of like wiring your mind for business. Like, oh, like this is possible. Like supply
Yeah.
chain, like this is how it works.
yeah
Like
yeah.
kind of broadening and like restructuring your boundaries to know like how to actually do business.
And even just like know what questions you should be asking like when you're like in a situation. It's like I need to
Right.
be able to answer these kind of questions to know whether or not this is a valid idea, if this is not, like what action I should take in this situation. And so I think in that sense it's pretty useful. So yeah. And I don't know, and I'm only speaking on like from even just like the case based method that Harvard Business School does, but I don't know like if people would say the same thing about other business schools that maybe only teach from like maybe textbooks or more concept wise. Yeah.
So bottom line, in summary, you're saying that business, it doesn't matter about the business school, like the name doesn't really matter. Is that your bottom line?
I would say so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think essentially all the business schools teach everything the same. Like teach all the same things. And it's kind of I think there's more resources than an individual can like utilize in 2 years. And so it's really up to the individual, like regardless of what school you go to, just like know what you want to do, maximize the resources and the things that you can try to do during that time. And I think each person can get a ton out of it regardless of where they go.
That's good.
Yeah.
So you're in Harvard Business School, but you're thinking about
yeah.
dropping out.
Yeah.
Dude, that's crazy. Most people just want to stay in. Why are you thinking
Yeah.
about that? Just give me some background for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's 2 or 3 things. If I can think of the third one on the fly, I'll say the third thing. So I think the first thing is COVID-19, right? So the reason why a lot of people go to business school is partly to get a better job or a better paying job coming out of it. And like given the state of the economy, like the job market's going to be super tough. And there's, I think, like thousands of like graduating MBAs every single year.
Yeah.
And to compete with all of them in one of the toughest job markets, I think is a bad idea. And the second bit, I mean, and kind of as part of that calculus or equation is like, should I be paying 125K per year for something and like not be able to achieve the kind of like better paying job as well as career? And so like that just like trade-off doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And like the second bit is that like if I want to start my own company and do entrepreneurship, I've like just come to realize more and more like an individual that can think well about it, think about business, or even just like talk about it, that is a very, very different skill set than actually being able to go out and do it and run it and start it, work with other people, bring a product to life and things like that. That's a very different muscle. A lot of these students that are some of the best students at Harvard Business School oftentimes absolutely fail in the real world. And so it's just kind of like, if I feel like I have kind of at least a foundational understanding of how to navigate the world and navigate the business world, then now it's just kind of on me to start exercising those muscles. And like an additional second year isn't going to give me as much utility as the first year did. And so I think it's those kind of 2 things that kind of tilt my kind of calculation towards dropping out and actually just trying my hand at something.
Interesting. So you're saying like after the first year, like going into your second year, you're saying like there's a diminish on the return of knowledge that you're getting as the years progress, you think?
Yeah, I would say so because I mean, I think so I've been in like 3 different higher ed like educational institutions so far, and I out of the 3, this one, Harvard Business School, I would say is hands down the best educational academic experience that I've had.
Wow.
I've actually learned the most, I think. And I think because they have like a nearly 100-year history of trying to perfect like all the 5 courses so that they all work in harmony together, so that kind of like strengthening that kind of the framework thinking, and like they're all interrelated. So I think they do an excellent job. And so I think within the first year, the utility that I get of it is really, really big. Whereas the second year, it's more of like you choose certain topics that you want to go deep on. And from what I've heard, they're excellent. They're really, really good. But there's still no substitute for actually going out and doing the thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where, I'm thinking there's kind of a diminishing return when you're just reading and thinking and talking about ideas for another year versus just going out and trying.
No, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good. I feel like that like insight is especially relevant for our generation, because our generation has so much access and so much like information like within reach that like most people just get stuck in absorbing and just like learning mode and like don't actually like take it to the next level where they act on doing something, you know? Almost like our faith. Like everyone reads the Bible, they know about Jesus, and they're like, oh, I gotta read my Bible, I gotta like focus on all these spiritual practices, but rarely do you see them actually like doing what Jesus did, like clothing the naked, like housing the homeless, or like not saying you have to like build houses or like house them in your own house, but like at least going out and doing something in terms of loving people. But no, that's good, man. I think that's so interesting that like you got into Harvard Business School, you saw that insight. Most of the people then are like trying to stick through the MBA program, get their MBA, and then trying to like basically like jumpstart their career. Do you like is there any like situation where you see yourself staying through the whole MBA? Like, is there a contingency in mind for you, or?
Yeah, I mean, as a person that didn't save up a lot, so I didn't work very long, so I don't have like a lot of cash for me to go through a year. Especially since I was in another master's program just before coming here.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Well, what kind of master's program were you?
I was doing the Schwarzman programs, the Schwarzman Scholars Program in Beijing.
But that's why you were in China.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about that. What is that?
Yeah, so it was founded by the Blackstone CEO. So Blackstone, for people that might not know, is a private equity firm that's been one of the more wildly successful ones. And the founder, now that he's kind of like in his later stage in his life, he's been doing a lot of philanthropic things.
Wow.
And his kind of vision was the future is U.S.-China relationship, and being able to navigate the East-West relationship well is going to be crucial, not just for the U.S.'s kind of like longevity and their competitiveness going forward, but just also for the peace and stability of the world. And so he was saying the Rhodes Scholarship was maybe the kind of thing that was important for the U.S.-UK relationship for the 20th century. But in the 21st century, we're going to need a new scholarship that focuses on the Chinese-U.S. relationship.
Oh, yeah.
And so his vision was like, let's have the Rhodes Scholarship of the 21st century, except that it's U.S. and China versus U.S. and UK.
Interesting. I want to revisit that, but I don't want to tangent too far. You're talking about not having enough money saved up. Yeah. Continue on that.
Yeah. So because I wasn't making any money last year, and essentially spent and gave to my parents and my family all the other money that I had saved up from working previously.
Wow.
So I think that's the one big thing, like going into this next year, I would like to have some source of funding on whatever I'm working on, so that I know that I can at least put food on the table and like have a roof over my head. I think if I can't find that in the next month or two, like that would be a reason for me to just go back to school and maybe do recruiting, or at least think about my options from the year of just being a student again.
So to clarify, if you don't have the funding to provide for your needs, you would drop out of...
No, I would go back to school.
You would go back to school.
Yeah,
you would stay in Harvard.
Yeah, because at least I can get student loans,
right?
And I can like survive for another year. But even as I say that, I kind of laugh because it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Like, go more into debt.
Well, I mean, that's just the sad reality of things, I guess. I mean,
Yeah,
having
yeah.
student loans that you can optionally defer is more sustainable than like pursuing like a risky venture sometimes.
Yeah, yeah,
But I
that
mean,
no one is. Yeah,
if that risk turns well, like if that
yeah,
risk like has a return, then
yeah,
yeah. But otherwise, just
yeah.
get student loans, rack them up, and then defer them, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, kind of part of it is like some people are thinking about just getting a job straight this year instead of just going back to school. But for me,
Yeah.
I'm not all that interested in just going and just getting a job again, because I know
Mm.
that like that just means that like I'm gonna go and work for somebody else and essentially have to develop skills that maybe that I'm not particularly interested in developing now,
Yeah.
and I'm not necessarily going the direction that I want.
Mm.
And so I think that is one thing I'm still not necessarily wavering on. I want to
Mm.
be going in the direction that I want.
Mm.
And if I can go in the direction that I want by doing my own startup,
Mhm.
that'd be best case scenario. Second, like best case scenario is at least I can go in the direction that I want in school,
Mm.
versus like going and working at another corporate job somewhere.